The knock came at 9 at night, in the middle of a rainstorm, on a road that nobody uses unless they're lost or looking for trouble. 4 years of that. 4 years of my brain doing the same thing every time I heard a sound at the door, every time the phone rang, every time a truck slowed down on the road outside. My brain would do that little jump, that half second of hope, before reality caught up and knocked it back down. My name is Thomas Grady. I'm 67 years old. Retired carpenter. I live alone in a cabin on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and I hadn't had a visitor in 3 months. So when I heard that knock, I already knew the drill. Get up slow, walk to the door. Tell yourself it's not him before you even get there, so it doesn't hit as hard when it isn't. I set down my whiskey and got up. My knees aren't what they used to be. Through the glass on the door, I could see a figure. Tall, expensive coat, rain coming off him in sheets. There was a black Mercedes parked in my driveway that I didn't recognize. I opened the door. It wasn't Michael. It was my younger brother, Earl, a man I hadn't spoken to in 15 years, standing on my porch like no time had passed at all, soaked through, looking at me with an expression I didn't have a name for. "Thomas," he said. I started closing the door. His hand came up and stopped it. "Get in the car," he said. "I know where Michael is. I need to back up, because if you're going to understand what those 5 words did to me, you need to know what the last 4 years looked like. My son, Michael, 36 years old, built a small tech company from nothing. Smart kid, always had been. He called the company Grady Tech Solutions, and he was about a year away from a serious funding round when he went on a ski trip to Whistler with some friends in the winter 4 years ago. The search teams found his ski pole near a crevasse on Blackcomb Mountain, found his goggles half buried in snow nearby. They searched for months, never found a body. After 2 years with no new evidence, the courts declared Michael legally dead. I hired lawyers to fight it, hired 2 private investigators who both took my money and gave me nothing. I spent most of what was left of my retirement fund. In the end, the law doesn't care what a father's gut is telling him. The law cares about timelines and paperwork and moving on. My wife Beverly passed from cancer the year after Michael vanished. She held on longer than the doctors expected. I think she was waiting for news that never came. After she was gone, I moved out to this cabin, and I've been here ever since. Just me, the water, and the same questions every night. Michael's wife, Diane, handled things differently. She was back on her feet fast. 6 months after the legal declaration, she married a man named Roy Harwell, a real estate investor with a lot of money and a lot of connections. They sold the house in the city and moved into something bigger. Diane also kept control of Grady Tech Solutions through the estate process, steering it toward an acquisition deal that I later learned would pay out around $15 million, mostly to her and Roy. My granddaughter Sophie was 4 years old when her father disappeared. She was 8 when Earl knocked on my door. In between, Diane made sure Sophie and I had as little contact as possible. Every time I tried to arrange a visit, there was a reason it couldn't happen. School, activities. Diane's personal favorite. Your obsession isn't healthy for her, Thomas. I hated that word. Like looking for your own son is something to be embarrassed about. And then there was Earl, my younger brother, 65 years old, 2 years behind me. We stopped speaking 15 years ago when I found out he'd quietly cut me out of our father's construction business while I was busy with my family and my work. He bought out my share for almost nothing and called it business. I told him what I thought of that and hung up. Never called again. He didn't either. So when he turned up at my door that night, the last thing on earth I expected was for him to be the one person who'd been working the whole time to find my son. I looked at him standing in the rain on my porch and I felt everything at once. Anger at who he was, desperate hope at what he'd just said. 15 years of silence, sitting between us like a wall I'd built myself, brick by brick, and suddenly I wasn't sure I wanted it there anymore. "You've got 60 seconds, I told him. Talk." He talked fast. For the past 8 years, Earl had been working as a private investigator out of Vancouver. He started after the business collapsed and his marriage ended. Said he found out he was good at tracking people who didn't want to be found. He'd built up a client list, mostly civil cases, missing persons, fraud investigations. 2 years ago, he was watching the local news and saw a segment on a charity gala in the city. Diane was there with Roy Harwell, all dressed up, giving a speech about mental health awareness. The irony of that, I would find out later, was something that should have made her sick to her stomach. It clearly didn't. Earl said something about the way she carried herself that night didn't sit right with him, so he started pulling on the thread. What Earl found when he started digging was worse than anything I'd imagined sitting alone in that cabin. Michael hadn't disappeared on a mountain. He hadn't fallen into a crevasse. He hadn't gotten lost in a whiteout and frozen to death somewhere no one could find him. He was alive. He was 40 minutes from where I was standing, and he'd been there for 4 years. Earl explained it slowly. The way you explain something to a person you're worried might not hold together if you go too fast. Diane had filed for medical guardianship of Michael approximately 3 weeks after his disappearance. She'd brought in a psychiatrist named Dr. Carl Monroe, who documented a diagnosis of severe psychotic bipolar disorder with acute paranoid features. The paperwork described Michael as a danger to himself and others, unable to manage his own affairs, requiring long-term inpatient care. The courts approved the guardianship. Diane became his sole legal decision-maker. Michael was admitted to Victoria Pine's private clinic outside the city. Under his own name, no fake identity, no cover story. Just a man the courts had declared mentally incapacitated, with his wife listed as the only person authorized to make decisions about his care or his visitors. Every time I'd shown up at that clinic over the years asking questions, they hadn't lied to me directly. They'd simply said they couldn't discuss patient information with unauthorized individuals. Diane had made sure I was never on any authorized list. The wall was completely legal. I'd been walking into it over and over without knowing why it wouldn't move. They didn't have to fake a death, Earl said. They just had to make him disappear into the system, and the system let them. I stood in my doorway with rain blowing in past Earl's shoulder, and I thought about every lawyer I'd hired, every investigator, every call I'd made to the RCMP asking them to look again. None of them had thought to look there. Neither had I. Why? I said. Just that one word. Earl had an answer for that too. He handed me a folder. Inside were printed bank records, wire transfer documents, internal company emails. The story they told was straightforward in the way that ugly things often are. Roy Harwell had identified Grady Tech Solutions as a target about 2 years before Michael disappeared. The company was small, but it had solid IP and a clear path to a significant acquisition. Roy's firm wanted to absorb it. The problem was Michael. He'd built the company and he wasn't selling. So Roy found another way in, through Diane. She and Roy had been in contact for at least 18 months before she married Michael. Earl couldn't prove they were planning everything that far back, but the financial transfers started 14 months into the marriage. Diane was CFO of Grady Tech. She had full access to the accounts. Over the next 16 months, she and Roy moved $800,000 in equity through a series of shell accounts. Small amounts at a time, structured to avoid automatic flags. Michael found it anyway. He was meticulous about the books. Earl pointed to one of the printed emails, dated 5 days before Michael's disappearance. It was from Michael's own account to Diane and 2 board members. Subject line: audit discrepancies, urgent. The email laid out exactly what he'd found and told them he was bringing in an independent forensic accounting firm the following week. He never got the chance. I sat down on the porch, step in the rain. Didn't even notice I was getting wet. There's one more thing, Earl said. He told me about the cloud storage file. Before Michael was committed in those last few days, when he must have known something was wrong and didn't yet understand how wrong, he'd recorded a conversation with Diane on his phone. An argument. Diane hadn't known he was recording. In the recording, she admitted to moving the money. Roy's name came up more than once. Michael told her he was going to the board regardless of what she said. Diane told him he needed to think very carefully about what happened next. That recording was sitting in Michael's personal cloud account. Diane either didn't know it existed or couldn't access it without his password. I looked up at Earl. How do you know about it? I don't know for certain it's still there, but I know Michael used the same password system for everything. Sophie told me without knowing why I was asking. He always used the name of their dog plus a number. I knew the dog, old yellow lab named Biscuit. Michael had that dog all through his 20s. Sophie had told me the same thing a few months back when we'd spent an afternoon together. She'd mentioned her dad used to let her help him remember passwords, laughed about it like it was just a funny memory. I'd gone home that night and sat in front of my laptop for a long time before I tried it. It took me 4 attempts. Third variation, and there it was. An audio file, 11 minutes and 43 seconds, sitting in a folder Michael had labeled with nothing but the date. I'd listened to it once, then I'd called Earl. That was 6 months ago. Earl had spent those 6 months building the legal case alongside a detective named Sandra Kowalski from the Major Crimes Unit. He'd also quietly made contact with a nurse at Victoria Pines named Gloria, who had raised internal concerns about the medication levels on one particular patient's chart. She agreed to submit a formal complaint to the BC College of Physicians about Dr. Monroe's prescribing practices. That complaint had triggered a medical review the previous month. The walls around Michael were already cracking before Earl knocked on my door. He came to me because the next step required family, specifically a blood relative to file a petition with the courts requesting an independent psychiatric evaluation completely separate from Dr. Monroe and Diane's legal team under BC law. That petition could not be blocked by the existing guardian once a judge approved it. Earl had already drafted the paperwork. He just needed my signature. I went inside and got a pen. The court approved the petition for independent evaluation 11 days later. Diane's legal team filed an objection within 48 hours. Earl said that was exactly what he wanted them to do. When a guardian fights that hard to stop a second opinion on someone's mental health, judges pay attention. The objection got denied. The independent evaluation was scheduled. In the meantime, Gloria's complaint to the BC College of Physicians had moved faster than expected. A medical review team showed up at Victoria Pines unannounced on a Tuesday morning. Earl called me that afternoon and said it the same way he said everything. Flat, no drama. The clinic is under review. Monroe is rattled. I asked him what we did now. We wait, he said, and we let the trap close. Waiting was the hardest part. I'd been waiting for 4 years already, and I still hadn't gotten good at it. I drove out to see Sophie twice that week. Diane had backed off on blocking my visits once the legal proceedings started. Her lawyers had probably told her that restricting a grandfather's access to his granddaughter while simultaneously fighting a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation would not look good in front of a judge. Sophie was 8 years old and smart in a way that caught you off guard sometimes. She asked me once during those visits why there were so many lawyers suddenly. I told her some things about her dad were getting sorted out. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Is he coming home?" I said, "I hoped so." I didn't want to promise her something and then watch it not happen. I'd had enough of that myself. The independent psychiatric evaluation of Michael took place on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the petition was approved. Earl and Sandra Kowalski had arranged for the evaluating doctor to be a neuropsychiatrist named Dr. Aldridge from Vancouver General, someone with no connection to Monroe, to Diane, or to any of Roy Harwell's business associates. The evaluation lasted just over 3 hours. Earl called me that evening. He read me one sentence from the preliminary report. No evidence of psychotic disorder. Patient appears to have been inappropriately medicated for an extended period. I sat in my kitchen with the phone against my ear and didn't say anything for almost a minute. "Thomas," Earl said. "I'm here," I said. The hearing was set for the following Thursday. Sandra Kowalski had been coordinating with the Crown Prosecutor's Office for the past 6 months. The financial evidence, the wire transfers, the shell account records, the internal emails from Grady Tech, all of it had been organized and submitted. The audio recording from Michael's cloud account had been authenticated by a forensic audio analyst. Roy Harwell's name appeared on enough documents that his lawyers had already started making quiet calls trying to work out some kind of arrangement. Sandra told Earl those calls stopped once the prosecutor made clear there was no arrangement to be made. I drove to Vancouver the night before the hearing and stayed at a motel near the courthouse. Earl met me in the lobby at 7 in the morning with 2 cups of coffee and a folder of documents I was supposed to review before we went in. We sat in the lobby and he walked me through everything one more time. At some point, I put the folder down and looked at him. "Why did you do this?" I said, not angry. I genuinely wanted to know. Earl wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. He looked older than I remembered, even accounting for the 15 years. The kind of older that comes from carrying things. After the business, he said, "I spent a long time telling myself I hadn't done anything wrong, that it was just a transaction. You weren't using your share. I needed the capital." He stopped. I knew that wasn't true. I just kept saying it until I half believed it. And then Beverly died and I wanted to call and I didn't. And then Michael disappeared and I wanted to call and I didn't. And then I saw Diane on that TV smiling at a camera and something in me just stopped making excuses. He looked at the table. "I couldn't bring Beverly back. I couldn't give you back the years, but I could do this one thing, so I did it." I didn't say anything for a while. There was a lot I could have said. About the business, about all the years of silence, about missing Beverly's last months and Michael's wedding and Sophie being born. I'd rehearsed versions of those conversations in my head more times than I could count. Instead, I picked up my coffee and said, "You should have called when Beverly was sick." "I know," he said. "Don't make me say it twice." He nodded and didn't push it. That was enough for the moment. Some things don't get resolved over 1 cup of coffee in a motel lobby, but you have to start somewhere. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper. Diane was already there when we came in, sitting at the respondent's table with 2 lawyers flanking her. She was dressed carefully, hair pulled back. The picture of someone who had prepared for this. She looked at me when I walked in. I looked back. I didn't say anything, and neither did she. Roy Harwell was not present. His lawyers had submitted documentation on his behalf. Sandra told me afterward that Roy had been picked up by investigators at his office that morning before the hearing started. His lawyers hadn't told Diane yet. The proceedings began with the judge reviewing Dr. Aldridge's evaluation report. He read the key findings into the record. No psychotic disorder. Inappropriate long-term medication. No clinical basis found for the original diagnosis or the resulting guardianship. Diane's lead attorney rose and began to object. The judge let him finish and then said simply that the court had reviewed the full record and was prepared to hear additional evidence before ruling. That was when the prosecutor asked to play the audio file. The room went quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like everyone in it had decided at the same time to stop breathing. The recording played through two small speakers on the prosecutor's table. Michael's voice came out first, steady and controlled the way he always got when he was angry but trying not to show it. He was laying out the numbers. Account transfers, dates, specific dollar amounts. 11 months of records he'd pieced together himself, sitting at his desk in his own company, figuring out that the woman he was married to had been taking it apart from the inside. Then Diane's voice. I had listened to that recording once, alone in my kitchen at midnight, and I had not listened to it again. Hearing it in that courtroom was different. The acoustics of the room made it sound closer somehow, more real. She didn't deny the transfers. She talked around them, redirected, said things like, "You don't have the full picture," and Roy explained all of this to me. Michael pushed back each time, asked her directly whether she had authorized wire transfers to accounts he had no knowledge of. She didn't answer that question directly, not once. Near the end of the recording, her voice changed, got quieter. She told Michael he needed to think about what kind of father he wanted to be, whether he wanted Sophie growing up with this kind of disruption, whether he'd really thought through what happened to men who made enemies of people like Roy Harwell. Michael said he was going to the board on Monday regardless of what she said. She said, "Then I guess we'll see what Monday looks like." That was where the recording ended. I was watching Diane when it finished. I'd been watching her the whole time. For the first 11 minutes, she sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, face composed. A woman who had prepared herself for this moment. Then she heard her own voice say Roy's name the third time and something shifted. Small thing. Her jaw moved. Her eyes went to her attorney. Her attorney was already writing something on a legal pad and didn't look up. By the time the recording ended, Diane was looking at the table in front of her. She didn't look up again. The judge called a brief recess. Sandra Kowalski appeared at my elbow and told me quietly that 2 officers were waiting in the hallway. When the session resumed, the judge took less than 20 minutes to issue his ruling. The guardianship was revoked immediately on grounds of fraud and abuse of process. Dr. Monroe's clinical findings were struck from the record. Michael Grady was declared legally competent and legally alive. I heard that last part and had to look at the ceiling for a moment. Legally alive. Like he'd needed a judge to tell the world what I'd known for 4 years. Diane Grady was arrested in the courtroom before she reached the door. Roy Harwell had already been in custody since that morning. Dr. Carl Monroe had surrendered himself to investigators 2 days prior and was cooperating fully with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. His medical license had been suspended pending a full disciplinary hearing. I walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sunlight and stood on the steps and didn't know what to do with my hands. Earl came out behind me and stood next to me, and we both looked at the street for a while without saying anything. A city bus went past. Someone was eating a sandwich on a bench across the road. Regular afternoon, regular world. Completely different from the one I'd been living in for the last 4 years. "I want to see him." I said. "I know," Earl said. "Let's go." Michael was still at Victoria Pines pending medical transfer, but Dr. Aldridge had already arranged for the inappropriate medications to be tapered down safely. When Earl and I arrived, a different doctor met us at the entrance. No resistance, no paperwork delays. We were family, and for the first time in 4 years, the building knew it. Michael was sitting up in a chair by the window when we came in, thinner than I remembered. Tired around the eyes, but present in a way I hadn't dared to imagine all those nights in the cabin. Actually there, looking at the door when it opened, he looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "Hey Dad, that was it. 2 words. I'd spent 4 years building up to 2 words and they were exactly right." I pulled a chair up next to him and we sat there for a while. He asked about Sophie first. I told him she was staying with me on the island, that she was okay, that she'd been asking about him every week without fail. He nodded slowly and looked out the window. "She's going to need some time," I said, "to adjust to all of this." "I know," he said, "I've got time. I've got nothing but time now." 2 weeks later, I brought Sophie to the hospital. She held my hand the whole walk down the corridor, and at the door, she stopped and asked me if he looked like himself. I told her he did. She walked in ahead of me, and I stayed in the doorway and watched my son open his arms and watched his daughter run straight into them, both of them holding on, neither one letting go. I stepped back into the hallway. Earl was there. We stood side by side and didn't say anything because there was nothing that needed saying. By September, Michael was living with Sophie and me on Vancouver Island. Some mornings were harder than others, but he was there, present, coming back to himself a little more each week. If you've been told to move on from something you know in your gut isn't finished, don't. Not every instinct is grief talking. Some of them are telling you the truth. The system failed my son, and it nearly failed me too. What saved him wasn't luck. It was one person who refused to stop looking, and one father who refused to stop believing there was something left to find. If you're in that place right now, keep going. The door you've been knocking on might be closer than you think.